Hey Alpha fam, welcome back to another episode of Alpha Commission. Just a quick 5-minute market update. Just wanted to point out that Bitcoin is having that pump that I was talking about. The head and shoulders played out on the small time frame, and now we're seeing kind of a medium time frame head and shoulders play out as well. Some of you may not have seen it here, but there was a pullback, and we got basically the same structure, right? So here's another little head and shoulders. And we have the measured move, right? So we're looking for around 41,000, and oh, here we go. Looking for around 41,000, maybe 40,800. This can play out over a long time. This head and shoulders, I actually was looking at this one first. It just chopped up, made another one, chopped up again, making another one, chopping up. We're just doing this chopping motion. And as I mentioned on the previous episode, this was part of the fractal that I had been looking at. And let's see if we can actually see this. Not that one. Not the trend. And this pattern here. Let's get rid of that. Where we have this kind of chop on the drop here. And then the next stage is this this kind of chop right here for a major pump. And so if this is going to play out, I really do expect that these head and shoulders are basically going to act as that chop on that little wing. See this pink area? Ends on a little wing. That kind of arrow pointing out. And then I would expect it to pop up. This is just from a fractal. It's hard to trade on that just alone. So I'm not advising anyone to trade just on a fractal. That'd be irresponsible. But you can see backwards in time. This also played out similarly, right? If you're going backwards in time, you have this type of head and shoulders right here. Right, something like that. And then it did the same thing. It popped up. On a smaller level, it made a formation. This is just in reverse, right? It's in reverse. That's not really valid because of course we move forward, but it is interesting that these W-shaped recoveries that they do pull out these type of fractals. And I just wanted to show you how that works and how you can trade off of them. A lot of people, as I've mentioned before, they don't like this style. They really hate it actually. But I find it works out, quite often. It works out quite often. And if you use a confluence of other factors, then you can get a nice trade because this was what, 2% move right here. What is this? Another, 2% move. If you're using leverage or something like that, then it's not so bad, right? It's a pretty good profit. Take a look at Kadena because Kadena would follow. That's 5%, right? MTV just waiting. VRA, okay, VRA is doing it. 5%. Luna just going for it, right? 10%. UOS Ultra 5%. So you can see these altcoins, these high-powered altcoins, they're basically following Bitcoin and have a little bit of a multiplier to them. But they also have a higher risk, right? If we go backwards. I'm not trying to convince you to take this trade, just giving you a small market update that these head and shoulders are playing out. We are seeing this slow chop up, and pretty soon I would expect for this little wing here to be done. And then I'm expecting perhaps a bigger move. And the invalidation, let's just say that something strange happens in the market, the bullishness dies. Maybe we just can't break resistance, right? Maybe this is just way too strong resistance. Then the invalidation would be that we come all the way back down to the bottom of this channel. Maybe here, maybe here, but highly likely here, and that we would continue our path down around that 33,000. So right now we're about 39,800-ish. We have this measured move on a possible, this is a very weird formation. I wouldn't necessarily call it a valid head and shoulders, but it looks pretty good. Possibly up to 45,600, which would take out the previous high. So that would be a bullish higher high after a bullish higher low. Let me get rid of this fractal. Let's see here. Trend paths. This was lower low. This is higher low. Went up. Lower high. Higher high. Very slight, but pretty good, right? And so it's logical that this would play out if the market is going to continue its bullishness, because this is on the same path. It's virtually on the same path. And this too, right? Look at that. So for our higher high to be right here, it would totally make sense. So do I expect that to play out? Yeah, I might expect that to play out. And it could be quick. Could be quick because I'm looking at this fractal just popping up, recovering these candles. Or it could chop a while. There's a lot of resistance formed by this chop right here. There's some resistance here. It's got to get through all of this. And there's a bunch of history back here, right? This is pretty strong resistance now. It was support, but it's probably resistance now. You got this wick. There's this whole area right here that's very dicey, right? So we got to get through that. And that's not going to be easy. That's probably why it's just chopping its way. You know, whoever is pushing the market forward, whether it's whales or whether it's just general sentiment, they need to break through all of that resistance. Because if they can't, then we're going down. And right now we do have a bit of this trend line going on, right? So we're about to really test if we can hold above that. And then the next one is this one, maybe. It's more of a horizontal. And this whole region is just going to be a lot of resistance in there. But overall, Bitcoin is looking like it wants to turn bullish. It's a pretty bullish formation. It's not the most bullish, but it is a pretty bullish formation. Of course, keeping that with a grain of salt, we do have the overall downtrend, right? The overall downtrend here. But if we can keep up this bullishness, if we can break through this kind of downtrend, if we can put another higher high, then yeah, maybe we can keep going even, you know, maybe 49, maybe even those mid 50s. But again, we're going to run into some heavy resistance. Lots of wicks here, lots of complications here where the market turns around. So we're going to have a lot of resistance. And after these type of pumps, it's really a good place to take your profit. You know, when you run into these resistance areas, it's good to take a little profit, because if you were buying here, then you might take a little bit of profit, let the rest ride till you get up to here, then take more profit, and buy back if we have a retrace. Still looking for something like this to play out. Just boom. But we might not get that. This might be just a whole new animal. And we might do one of these type of chop downs before dropping down, right? This kind of chop. This formation looks very similar to this formation. This formation looks very similar to this formation, including popping up here, except that this has a higher low, right? Which is a good sign. But here it had a higher low, and it wasn't able to make a higher high, and then it fell down and kept falling down. That's why it's good to take a little bit of profit when you run into these heavy resistance areas. And then we'll just see how it goes. But didn't want to take too much of your time. Just wanted to show you a little bit of what's going on, those type of formations that are playing out. Since I had mentioned them before, just following. We're just following to see if these head and shoulders might end up working out, if these channels might end up being real, and if we're going to make a higher high or not. If we make a higher high, that's going to be a really good sign. There's going to be some bullishness coming back to the market. But for right now, we're just in this area that could easily get rejected and turn back down. And if we did turn down, that could be upsetting to some, because what we would end up seeing is we could end up seeing something like this. Right? Oops, what was that? Could end up seeing a head and shoulders to the downside here. This is just a terrible drawing. It could take us as low as 28, 27,000, something like that. And so you have to be careful, right? You can't take anything for granted right now. Not 100% sure how it's going to work out. But looking okay. Looking better than before. This doesn't look very valid to me. We're already at a higher price than this one. So, yeah, I'm leaning bullish just on the structure of it. Usually for a valid head and shoulders, the right side shouldn't be taller than the left side, because that indicates price action going up, right? Overall price action has been going up because this is higher than this. If the shoulder's lower, then overall price action would be going lower. And so that could be an indication of some possible downside playing out. But this could be an invalid head and shoulders. Even if we did have a strong pullback, this could end up being an invalid head and shoulders, in which case you would get this type of measured move, which could see us up to $50,000. So if this is an invalid head and shoulders on the pullback, that would be actually even more bullish than the inverted head and shoulders that I was pointing out here, which has the measured move to 45,000. right? 46, 45,000. Four-hour RSI looking good. MACD doing pretty good in the green. Building up a lot of volatility here. Which means a move could be incoming. We could squeeze a little bit more out of this. The jewel is still bullish. This could go a while longer. Yeah, there might be some interesting moves coming up. But there's no guarantee. It has to bust through this the resistance that we have in this area. And it's been struggling with it. You know, we chopped all the way down. It just depends how the market's going to react. See the dollar continuing to go down. Looks like it's finding a little bit of support right here. So that could be slowing us down. If it does break down further, maybe Bitcoin will go. Gold still going down. People still taking profit on their gold. Where are they going to put their profit? Into Bitcoin, into tech stocks. Bonds turning up a little bit. S&P is still bullish. I mean, this isn't bullish. This is a downtrend, but at least today bullish. Yeah, none of these are turning around. They're just pumping. Very engulfing candles, very long wicks on them. Volatility coming down still. Getting more into a normal region. This normal region we want to be in for healthy trading. NASDAQ doing good. Sorry, Apple, I mean. Yeah, still going. Tesla, making some decisions. Ooh, ooh. Nice recovery on the UK 100. Look at that. It's like it didn't even happen. Germany still feeling some part of the hit from that war. They do a lot of trade with Russia, so it's understandable. Yeah, I thought it would take longer for that pump up, but nope. The Nasdaq just wanted to do it right away. Dow Jones, Korean Composite. Probably a lot of business with Russia also. The Nikkei, Japan. MicroStrategy bouncing. Yep. Let's look at Grayscale. Oh, that fractal is playing out. But if this fractal continues with Grayscale, then we could see some chop down here. Let's see how this wick does, because maybe this was the chop. Maybe this was the chop right here. And maybe we can just like put this over here. Maybe this is happening, right? possible. But I drew out this Grayscale Bitcoin Trust fractals just to imagine if we did have a recovery, what might it look like? I used certain, this is kind of like when AI looks at like certain points on your face, right, and tracks facial movements. Just trying to figure out how would the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, the so-called smart money, how would it move? We got rejected here. We were analyzing the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and we saw it come, just poke slightly out of trend. And then we said, okay, look, we have to adjust the trend lines because this thing fell back in. It tried again. We adjusted the trend line again, and then it fell to hell because it just couldn't break out. And one of the things that was confusing us was that the actual OTC version, here you have a downtrend that broke. You have a downtrend that broke. It looks like it's just retesting that downtrend right now, right? But, this was very confusing. Like, why did it break down this much? But you can see on the FTX version, it never broke out of its trend, right? So I switched charts. And this chart makes a heck of a lot more sense, even though it has pretty low volume. This chart makes a heck of a lot more sense than does this one on the professional exchanges with all the gaps. With all the gaps, you can't see the full moves that it has. There's just so many gaps. It's just not traded enough. But here we have smooth lines, and we can see all the peaks and the weeks, all the peaks and the wicks on FTX. And so by seeing that, I was able to create channels and fractals out of it based upon the movements of Bitcoin. And this is what I'm projecting, that we do have something similar to this, where we could see a massive drop next, just to scare the bejesus out of the market, and then we could have a recovery. Or, of course, we could continue going down. But I don't have a fractal for that because this thing doesn't have that long of a history on its chart. It only goes back to 2021 January. So I don't have enough information for if we do have a collapse. But if this smart money is using fractals, and if the market gains some bullishness, then I would expect a pullback here and then a pump, which is why I was advising perhaps taking some profits, because this chart has actually been more accurate than the Bitcoin chart. And this chart also had a lower high here, right? This was a higher high, lower high. But you go to Bitcoin's chart, it had a higher high. It didn't have a lower high the way the Grayscale chart did. It had a higher high. And so you would think that Bitcoin was going to be very bullish by this chart, but Grayscale, the smart money, was telling us, nah, we're probably going down. Grayscale was the warning. Everyone thought, oh, a higher high, we're going to 100K. Grayscale was saying, nah, we're turning around early. And expect a pullback. Expect interest rates. Expect volatility in the world. And so I like using this Grayscale Bitcoin Trust chart just to add some confluence if I'm unsure what's going on the Bitcoin chart. And then I'm making this fractal, but I'm not trading by it. It's just advising me. It's just a hypothesis. It's a ghost. It's not even real, right? It's just a concept. Don't trade on it. But it has worked out really well. I put this fractal on this around here. And I aligned it the way that it aligned back here. I used the hypothesis that the rejection that we had was similar to the rejection that we had last summer. So that this rejection in early February, I think I made a video about it. I thought it was very similar, on the Bitcoin chart. I thought this rejection in early February, I thought it was very similar. The EMAs looked very similar to summer. You got everything over it. Just kind of like high possibility that it could chop all the way down again. But what happened in summer? We didn't just have one drop and then a bounce and then a peak, one drop, bounce, peak, but we had another drop, and then we failed to get up to the peak. Are we going to fail to get up to the peak? And then we had a massive drop, massive drop. So if this fractal is playing out, and if this doesn't end up just popping off the way that those head and shoulders are suggesting it might, then I would expect it to drop and just scare people to death. And then we'll have to evaluate whether we're going to continue to go down or whether we're going to have another one of these runs. And it's not an easy decision because if you look at this chart, like we're really high up there, right? You look at the weekly, it wants to come back down to these 200s. It doesn't mean it has to right now. It could do it later. Maybe when the 200s keep rising and this thing just goes sideways, and then they meet, right? It could be just a simple meeting, right? These things go this way, this thing goes this way, and then after they touch, boom, right? Or it could be more dramatic because if you want to pop off sooner, you got to meet sooner. And so then we have to have a bigger fall. And then we can go. The sooner we have a huge drop, the sooner we can skyrocket, right? I mean, we could also just chop and then take our time forever. But in general, you'll have a reset. So that's what I'm looking at. And once again, I lied. This wasn't a 5-minute episode. But we're getting that chop. And if we do have a pump, I wouldn't necessarily buy in here because we're at resistance, right? You don't buy in at resistance. It's too late. This was the move, right? I called it here, I called it here, I called it here, and this is a little bit too it's a little bit too risky based upon competing fractals from like Grayscale and from Summer versus these head and shoulders and the other fractal that I showed you where we have this kind of lift off. But you can make your own decision. For me, I am seeing the possibility of this being a inverted head and shoulders that could take us all the way into the mid 40s. Potentially we meet resistance and we double top and then we go down. Or perhaps we just can't break through this and we go down. Or, we get to the 50s and we just keep going. I'm not a fortune teller. I'm not here to try to advise you on what trades to take. Just going over concepts that we've shared together in Alpha Commission. And so that's your alpha for the day. Hope that helped you think about the market a little bit. And stay safe. Happy trading.